Hi, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Rules Guy. I'm Chris Welsh, the creator of Baseball Rules Academy, and I'm your host tonight as we will discover some baseball rules. We will dig into the high school baseball rules and discover some very special changes that happened from 2019 to 2020, and then, of course, now with the virus shutdown to 2021. We will discuss those NFHS rules with Brady Hood, who is an umpire, a certified Class A high school umpire in the state of Ohio, and a very knowledgeable guy about high school rules. He comes later in the program. First in the program, very honored to bring in a gentleman that I've known for a long, long time. He has been up in the Reds media level for the last 41 years as the official scorer of the Cincinnati Reds. And let's bring him on right now to talk about what he does, what official scorers do, and how the heck he ever got into this job in the first place that has lasted so long. Let's welcome Ron Roth. And Ron, it's just great to see you here.
Chris, thanks for having me. We're always glad to talk baseball with you, and especially in today's climate, even more. And just happy to be here and be a part of your program. You do a great job.
41 years as an official scorer. First, you got to tell me how you got into this business.
Well, that's a very long story, but it was the off season of 1979, actually, and I had the fortunate opportunity to be Glenn Sample's assistant at the University of Cincinnati, and Dick Wagner, who was the general manager of the Reds at the time, was informed by Major League Baseball that they weren't going to supply official scores to score the games anymore. The sports writers and the players were getting into conflicts, and they wanted to go to outside scores. So Dick Wagner came up to Glenn and said, "Hey, we got to find a couple guys to go down and do the scoring down there, and would Glenn be interested? And did he know anybody else that would be interested also?" So Glenn jumped on it, and kind of the rest was history. We were, like I say, we were both coaching at the time, and UC had a game that day, opening day, 1980. And so obviously Glenn had to stay with the ball club at the university. So I came down and scored opening day that year. I was 33 years old, and it was kind of eye-opening. You know, we all think we've been around baseball a long time, and we all know about scoring, and yeah, I can do that. And I went down there, like I say, I was 33 years old, and I met Jim Ferguson, who was a publicity guy there at the time, and he showed me where to go and what room to go into, and he opens this door, and he didn't really do this, but it felt like he stuck this shoe in the small of my back and pushed me in there and said, "Go get him, kid." And I walked down to the front row, and who's sitting there but Paul Summercamp, the legend public address announcer, who I grew up as a young man idolizing. He was, had a special style of announcing players, and here I am sitting down next to him trying to score a game. And like I say, this is opening day, 1980, and 2 innings later, an inning later, in walks John Popovich with a TV camera and a microphone, and sticks it in front of my face and says, "Well, this is the first year that the non-sports writers are here. What's your toughest call?" I said, "John, I don't know. I've only been here an hour and a half." So it was quite an experience, but we lasted 40 years now, and things are still going well.
Well, it's been a lot of fun here watching you over many of those 40 years, Ron. But let's clear up a couple of the myths that surround official scorers. First of all, they're not hired by the home team, are they?
That's correct. We are hired by Major League Baseball to do an impartial job. I know all the scorers in all the towns live in those towns, but the integrity of baseball, the integrity of the baseball records are really at our fingertips, and they don't need us to go in there and make every call for the home team. A base hit is a base hit. It's governed by the rules of baseball, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But that's our job, and we've got to interpret those rules as Major League Baseball wants them interpreted, not by the home team or the visitor team.
Ron, A lot of people don't know this, but in the official baseball rules, the OBR, there's a section at the very back, which is, I guess, the nuts and bolts of what you need to decipher how to judge a base hit versus an error, how to score an RBI, all those things like that. Section 9 of the baseball rules rule book. You're probably pretty familiar with that. That's probably your walking guide day in and day out.
That's our Bible, and you know that's the gospel. That's what we have to go by, and we can't vary from it. And you know, sometimes you know, people think the rules should be this way, and they're not. I mean, those are the rules we go by, and you'd be surprised how many knowledgeable people, myself included. Not that I'm knowledgeable, but when we started, we didn't know the rules, or we think we know the rules, and they're not really, you know, the actual rules. And everything that's in there in every section is what we go by. That's gospel, and you know, our interpretation of them is something that, you know, how hard a ball's hit and so on and so forth can vary it a little bit, but the basic guidelines that we go by are rule number 9, and those are the rules.
Not only rule number 9 or section number 9, but you're also getting a certain amount of continuing education as the years go on, year in and year out. They bring you guys, and there's probably 3 scores minimum per city to make sure that every game is going to be well staffed. But you guys get your share of continuing education too, don't you, Ron?
Yes, that's true. And it's been taken to an extremely different level here in recent years. Like I said, when Glenn and I started some 40 years ago, you know, it's actually Cincinnati, I believe Houston, Pittsburgh, and maybe Atlanta. I don't know. There was just a handful of cities that started with the non-sports writers. And almost the following year in '81, we were pretty well staffed up with non-sports writers. And, you know, for those 29 years that I scored with Glenn, we were basically on an island and never had much contact. And when Glenn passed away, you know, our bosses at the time were Phyllis Marriage and Katie Feeney. The National League and the American League were kind of split at that time. And they started having these meetings for the scorers, and Laurel Prieb, who is now in charge of us after Katie and Phyllis retired, has taken this whole scoring thing to a different level. And we're now meeting in New York every year, late January, February. You know, he brings in 1 scorer from every city. So we have 30 cities represented, and several of the cities, New York, Philly, a couple of the close ones, and other scores from other cities will come in. So we usually have about 50 scores out of the 87 or 88 scores that are there every year. And we go over film, we go over plays from the prior year, and it's a great learning tool for all of us. And I think our profession has just taken to another level through Laurel's efforts.
Let's take this to another level too, Ron. And everybody wants to see, I'm sure, the tools of the trade, exactly how you keep score, because you go to the youth parks around America, around the world, actually, whether you're talking about scoring softball or scoring baseball or scoring fast pitch softball or little league, all the way up to major leagues. Somebody wants to keep score of it. I want to see the tools by which you keep score of a major league game that are all approved by Major League Baseball. So if you don't mind, let's take a look at some of the score pages that you use that actually you and Glenn Sample designed. All right, now, Ron, here's your regular scorecard that you use, and it looks like a normal scorecard. Why don't you take us through this a little bit and describe what we're looking at, and I'll be able to pan around as you describe where we're going and explain really detail by detail what goes into an official scorer.
Well, okay, Chris, let me point one thing out too before we get started. You know, every official scorer in every city uses their own scorecard. These aren't mandated. These particular scorecards that we have here aren't mandated by Major League Baseball. These were designed by us, although our scorecards are the property of Major League Baseball. But we use scorecards, and the things that we record for us might be different than what you do in the broadcast booth. Glenn and I got, we got about 5 games into the 1980 season when we had a scorebook and 2 pencils and figured out, well, we needed to come up with a better system for recall and getting the items that we need, because not only do we have to keep score, but we have to make certain announcements. We got to give pitching lines, pitching changes, official summaries. And so what we did is design this scorecard, and you'll see, first of all, across the very top of it is just the name of the teams that are playing. This was a game in St. Louis. St. Louis was the visitors. The date was June 6th, I believe, 2017, maybe. It shows my name there as the score, gives the weather. And then we go back to the left side of the scorecard, and coming down the left side is the lineup. And you'll see some names of some former players on there, but we give the name, the position. If they change positions, which there were a few of them that have changed positions, those will be on the right column right there in the middle there, just to the left there, Chris, a little bit, right there. The uniform numbers. And if you go down, when you're scrolling down, the Reds only used 1 pinch hitter. That was designated by the letter, it's lowercase a, Michael Lorenzen, pinch hit in the 7th inning for Tim Adelman. I'm sorry. So and our subs are in there. We usually put the starters in black ink. The subs come in blue ink there. So that gives us, who our subs and who our changes are. Then if you scroll back up into the main body, you can see the different colors that we use there. Obviously, the ones that are sticking out are the yellow ones which are the runs that were scored. This particular scorecard happens to be the game that Scooter Gennett went 5 for 5 with 4 home runs. So you can see his 4 home runs there, plus his base hit to begin the game. But you'll see everything. The strikeouts are in red. You'll see I designate the strikeouts that are called with a C, strikeout called. Some people will use a backwards K for that. Walks are in green. You'll see those lines going both vertical and horizontally. Those are either pitching changes or pinch hitters or defensive changes. The horizontal ones are the pitching change. The vertical ones are the defensive or the batting changes, pinch hitters. The base hits are in blue. Anything that's in pencil or just regular putouts, we don't need to know. You'll see that 8 there in the 2nd inning there. We don't need to know whether that's a fly out or a line out. It's just, an 8 is a fly out actually, or a line out, could be either one, but we use those for putouts and assists. Down at the bottom, you see those squares down there. Those are the inning tallies. The individual innings are going across the top, and it's cumulative going down the bottom. That's runs, hits, errors, left on base, and earned runs. And so we tally those up going across. And then you're looking right there at the bottom. Those are our pitching summaries. Those are the pitchers, the visitors' pitchers, the innings pitched, the runs allowed, the earned runs, the batters, the total batters they faced, runs, earned runs, walks, hits, errors, and who started the game. Then we tally those up. And that sheet that you see there, that box, you'll see on the bottom of the Elias Sports Bureau, which I'm sure Chris will pull up here at a later time. But you'll see that, as well as that box. You'll see to the right of our scoring there, you see those tallies, and those dark and light lines, those are the tallies for the game summaries. And on the far right there, Chris, if you can pan over there, those are the pitching lines. Those are the ones that we announce to the media when a pitcher is removed. You can see all the different categories. What we will do is we'll come on the public address announcer to all the media when that's Wainwright's pitching line. When he's removed and a new pitcher comes in and his line is complete, we'll announce that they pitched, so many innings and go right down there. There you're looking at the umpires for the game in their positions. And then you see the official summary. At the end of the game, we have to announce the official summary to the media. The Reds won that game 13. Their official summary was the Reds 13 runs, 11 hits, no errors, 5 left on base. St. Louis had 1 run, 5 hits, no errors, 5 left on base. Time of the game, the winning pitcher, the losing pitcher, and if there was a save. And they paid attendance for that game, 18,620. And that's basically our scorecard. That's the visitor side. The other side is identical. And that's what we use. Every score in every town has a different system. There's nothing that's mandated for physically keeping that scorecard. That's just what works for us. We found it to be to our benefit. That's our put-out and assist sheets. We have to keep track, obviously, of the put-outs and assists and report that on our final scorecard and our report to the Elias Sports Bureau. We keep that as the innings go through, inning by inning. At the end of the game, we tally it up. They have to balance out. We give that sheet to the MLB datacaster. He checks it with his box score. And if it checks out, we're good to go. And we put that onto our official score sheet and go on. It's just a form, again, that we in Cincinnati use. Other scores in other cities may use something else. Okay, Chris, that's the copy of the Elias Sports Bureau report that we have to transfer from our scorecard onto that scorecard, onto that form, and then at the end of the game, scan it and send it into the Elias Sports Bureau for the permanent records of the game. These are now, last year, the 2019 season was the last year we're going to be using those things. Everything has gone to computer now, but you'll see that's the box score that you saw on our score sheet. Right there is the pitching box that I pointed out to you on the score sheet. You're looking right above that of the pinch hitters and what they did. Again, the official summary, the umpires, my signature validating the score. And on the right side is the attendance, the time of the game, the weather conditions to start the game. And there's our proof of the game. Those 2 numbers there have to balance out, or we're missing some numbers someplace. So you got the home team, the visitors team. And again, those forms we've been using forever, but going forward in the 2020 season, it's all gone to computer. So those will all be turned in by the MLB datacaster after we approve them.
Ron, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking right now, gee, that doesn't look at all like the scorecard that I use on Saturday afternoon when my little Johnny goes out to play baseball. But what is, you've coached high school baseball. You've been around amateur baseball a long time. In fact, you were actually a coach for me when I was an amateur baseball player on a travel team. When you advise a scorer, whether it's a team mom or the team dad and somebody who's responsible for keeping the book, what do you advise them to make sure that they do to make sure that all the kids have fun and enhance the ball game?
Well, again, Chris, each level is in and of itself, and whatever level you're at, it's still the game of baseball. And certain things that you have to record in there. You want to make sure that each kid is put into the game and is getting his his at bats and his statistics recorded. At each level, you're looking for different things. The higher up you go, the more information that's needed. Typically in the lower levels, they're not interested in put outs and assists. Stolen bases are always a question mark. But there's a lot of rules that, at the lower level, you'd be surprised that you think that you don't know. And from the scoring standpoint, there's a plethora of rules that are in there that you take for granted. But, develop your own system like we did. Even at when we got to the major league level, we knew what we had to record. We knew what we were responsible for. And a lot of the stuff like that you need to know, we don't need to know. And so it just clogs up our scorecard. We try to make it as simple as possible. And going forward, to just make sure that everything gets recorded and all the kids that are in the game are put into the game for their own record's sake.
Ron, now I got to ask you a question. Let's get into some meat and potatoes before we let you go. You're going to be a regular on Ask the Rules Guy on our Baseball Rules Academy live stream, and we thank you for joining us. But before we let you go, let's talk about one thing. Let's talk about what is considered ordinary effort. That seems to be something that comes up over and over again. Every time there's a debate, whether it's at home watching the television, whether it's in the broadcast booth, maybe you're at the ballpark and you see a play and you say, oh, well, that's an error. And the guy next to you says, oh, no, that's a base hit. Let's see what the official scorer says about that. Normally, it revolves around something known as ordinary effort. Give us once and for all what the scorer's opinion is of ordinary effort and how you judge that to be a hit or an error.
Well, it's very simple, actually. And what's ordinary effort for the knot-hole player is different from the high school player, is different from every level you go up. And the rule book is very specific. It's ordinary effort for the average person at that level, at that position. So, and I guess maybe that broadens out, but, a person that's used to playing shortstop, an average shortstop in the major league, what's ordinary effort to him. Now, if you move Joey Votto over to shortstop, his ordinary effort at shortstop isn't what a normal shortstop, what Derek Jeter's was, So, I mean, that's where your expertise has to come in. But as far as the rule book, it's ordinary effort for the average player at that position.
I've got so many things I want to ask you. In fact, I have for years been able to. We're separated by a glass sliding door between the scorer's booth and the television broadcaster's booth. And every time I've got a question, I'm able to slide that door open and say, really? That was a base hit? Of course, pitchers want to stick up for other pitchers with earned runs and all. But you've always been able to come up with a good, solid answer. And most of the time, it is recommendations that you get from Major League Baseball, the guidelines that are either in Rule 9 or maybe an auxiliary manual that you handed to you. So you've really got a good explanation every time of what should be a major league hit versus a major league error. And it's been great to have you on the program tonight, Ron. I can't wait to get you over here next time because we're going to take some questions from the audience next time. We're going to find out what you're thinking about, how can a guy lose a ball in the sun and it'd be a base hit? Why would that victimize a pitcher like that? The pertinent things about baseball scoring. And we thank you very much here for joining us on Ask the Rules Guy tonight, Ron Roth.
It's a pleasure, Chris. Anytime.
Welcome back to Ask the Rules Guy. It's the show that comes on every week, and we've examined all the baseball rules. We had a great time talking with Ron Roth, the official scorer of Major League Baseball for the Cincinnati Reds. He's been doing it 41 years. Imagine that. Now we go to a young guy who's making his way through the high school and college ranks, amateur baseball all summer long when it's being played, a Class 1 certified umpire in the state of Ohio, Brady Hood, who is also a contributor to Baseball Rules Academy. We welcome in Brady right now. And Brady, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you here. Even without baseball, we're going to be talking a little baseball rules.
Yeah, it's good. It's a bad situation, but I think this is making the best of it, and people still want to talk baseball and be around baseball. And the Ohio guys, our season just got officially canceled 2 days ago, so we miss it, and we never got to experience it this year. So I'm already thinking about next year.
Well, I think there are a lot of people right with you right now, hoping that maybe by the end of the summer, some of the young guys, the amateur players, guys and girls, will be able to get back out on the diamond and play a little bit of baseball. The thing that impressed me about you right from the very first time we ever had a conversation was your passion for getting the rules correct. I can tell in our conversations with you as an umpire, you never go out on a limb when you don't think you know the answer. You're honest about it, but you try to make the right rule according to the interpretation that you know, and that's a good guideline for amateur umpires to live by.
Yeah, if I don't know, I will ask somebody who knows, and there are way more people who know more than me than don't know more than me. So if I don't know something, I'm not afraid to ask somebody. I'm also not afraid to look it up. There's a lot of guys who they won't even touch the rule book. Once they get it in class and they never look at it again. And that's a mistake. It's fun to go to those rules meetings, the 4 or 5 you got to attend before the season starts for your association. But there's lots of rules to cover, and they don't cover nearly as much as they should.
That's really one of the reasons why I started Baseball Rules Academy, because you can put it in your pocket. It comes by way of your telephone. If you have a question before you go to a ball game, you sit in your car, you sit out in the back in the trunk there where you're changing into your cleats, and you maybe look up a couple of questions you weren't so sure about. I can guarantee you one thing. The parents in the stands will be checking your rules interpretations when they log on to Baseball Rules Academy. All right, so let's get it going on what we're going to do tonight. We're going to decipher a few high school rules, the NFHS definition of these rules, and let's start with the one rule that was changed, one of the rules that was changed, points of emphasis between 2019 and 2020. Of course, 20's been banged, but figuring going into 2021, the DH rule has been changed. Tell us about how it's been changed and what coaches and umpires should be looking for.
Yeah, so for the umpire, there's really not too much of a difference as far as how you're going to manage the game, but it gives coaches the opportunity to keep their best players in the game. So what they've essentially created is the original DH, which everybody knows and some love. If you're an American League fan. But now they have what's called a player DH. And so essentially you can keep your guy who is your best defensive player, say the pitcher, and you can keep his bat in the lineup. So you can designate him as his own designated hitter. So when you hit that pitch limit, he's able to be brought out of the game and his bat can stay in the game. Now, it's just like the DH, and then when there's a substitution, when he comes out, that kills the DH. So if you have that player designated hitter, and he's substituted for, he has to go back in on defense. So there's a reentry rule in high school baseball. So if he comes out of the game and he's still his own DH, and then he is substituted for offensively, in order to go back in the batting lineup, so even like a pitch runner situation, that would be a good example of where this would come up. Pitcher, maybe great bat, maybe not so fast running, and it's a tight ball game. You might want to pinch run for him. Well, now he's got to come back in that same spot in the lineup, and it kills the DH.
Well, you wrote an article, or you helped write an article for us on this particular case on our website, baseballrulesacademy.com. It talks about all the points of emphasis for 2020, and that changes to the DH rule was a very important one right there, one that I did not know about until you wrote it for us. I thank you very much for that, and it sounds like you've got a pretty good handle on how the DH rule should work for high school baseball going forward. Now, let's talk about let's get some action plays going on. You want to do some of that? I've always thought that the slide rule and all the rules that surround the slide rule are always greatly misunderstood. Some of them are myths. some of the parents and players that come to the ballpark are sure that they know all about the slide rules, but
Every rule.
yeah, and well, that's true about that. But I found out that maybe that's not the case. So let's take a look first at a play that I find is kind of interesting. We'll share this play so we can get it up on the screen here. And the question is, does a runner have to slide at all? Say there's a runner at first base, and that runner is coming into second base on a ground ball. The question is, does he have to slide? Let's see what this runner does right. Obviously, he's coming into second base right here. Made for TV, yes, but there's no slide attempt right there. The question is, as an umpire, how do you judge his call? Should he have gotten down to make a slide in order to get out of the way?
Yeah, so there's no requirement to slide in high school baseball. So, he has a right to the bag, and he can get there how he can get there. If he wants to slide, he can head first, feet first. But he's got 3 feet on either side. And, just observing this play from the camera angle, it looks like he tagged him out. But if you're if you're in the 2-man system, there's no way that that's the position you're going to be in. Otherwise, you're in really bad mechanics. So
we had a really good cameraman, maybe not a very good umpire, but a very good cameraman working for us that day. Let me ask you this, though. When you take the no slide attempt one step further, at what point does it become interference, or for that matter, intentional interference on the part of the runner going from first to second? Say this is the scenario. There's a ground ball double play, runner at first base on his way to second. He's easily going to be out. But instead of sliding or getting out of the way, he stands there. The second baseman turns the double play, and the runner fails to get out of the way. He doesn't intentionally get in the way, but he doesn't get out of the way. Is that interference or intentional interference in any way?
Yeah, so in high school rules, there's no such thing as intentional or unintentional. That's a little bit different from Major League Baseball. There are 4 umpires, and you can figure that out. In high school, there's only 2, and you don't have time to think about what was he doing it on purpose? Was he accident? Interference is interference, and obstruction is obstruction. So that's the first thing. Secondly, again, the batter has the right to the bag. If he interferes with the play after he is out, he should get out of the way. If it's obvious that he's interfering, that's a no-brainer. That's an interference call, and the batter runner is going to be out heading to first. So if it's close, and I don't know, it would have to be a really slow developing play for that scenario to happen. Most of the time, even if a slow hit ball, he's going to be almost a second, or a hard hit ball, it's going to be a no-brainer. And if it's got to be obvious for me to make that call. But his intention doesn't matter. If he interferes with the play, he does interfere with the play.
Okay, interesting stuff right there. How about a play where a runner comes into second base hard? We're going to show you that play right now.
Okay.
And he comes into second base and with the intention of breaking up the double play, but he does a slide that is legal at the major league level and the professional level, but maybe not at the NFHS, the high school level. It's a pop-up slide. Let's take a look at it a couple of times, and then you tell me what you think. All right. What do you think about that pop-up slide?
Yeah, so pop-up slides are not illegal. So pop-up slides are a legal slide, but the issue comes into play with the force-out slide rule. Okay, and so that's going to be in Section 8, Rule 4. Articles 1 and 2 should cover that. But what you're looking at is, does the runner interfere with the fielder's ability to make a play? What does interference mean? Okay, so he does not have to make physical contact in order for interference to be called in that situation. If he alters the play of the fielder in any way, it is interference. The throw of the fielder does not matter. So if it's an immediate dead ball, because interference is an immediate dead ball, so we don't have to wait to see, okay, did he make the throw? He did. It's out. Okay, we ignore it. There's nothing like that. It's an immediate dead ball. You call it when you see it, and it's a judgment call. So if I'm a coach, pop-up slides are good slides. They're, for the most part, they're pretty safe, unless you're going into a guy and then you're doing it on purpose. But again, intent doesn't matter in high school rules. And if you're way late getting there and pop up, you obviously had no bearing on the play. So that's the other scenario. But I would just teach my guys, slide to the bag on that situation, or don't slide at all. You're not required to slide. And I can tell you, you're a lot bigger of you're a lot bigger of a obstacle if you just stay running to the bag, because you're allowed to do that.
Interesting stuff right there. Good coaching point, too, at the very end of that about whether you're going to slide, pop up, and maybe be called out for interference, or maybe just going in standing up when you know you're going to be out. All right, we've got one more to show you, and I think it's kind of an interesting one. And I'm sure that from a umpire's perspective, it's sometimes difficult to figure out whether this is intentional or not. But in this particular example, we're going to see a runner coming into second base. He's going to slide with his feet high. And you take a look at this play. We'll take a look at it a couple of times and see how he ends up with his feet up in the air right there. I don't know if that's really something that you ever want to see at any level of baseball. How do you rule this play, Brady?
Yeah, so that's obvious interference, and if I'm that umpire, I'm looking at that as it's an illegal slide for sure, and it's 100%, in my opinion, that's malicious. And my little cue for if it's malicious or not, his leg stays up. It's one thing if your leg kicks around and goes to the ground. Everybody's rolled over on the ground and your leg follows you. But he's using his muscles to keep his leg up, and that's malicious. And again, intent doesn't necessarily matter with malicious contact, but that's an obvious one. And if you're too scared as an umpire to make that call, you don't need to be out on the base. You need to be making that call. Coaches don't coach that way. You will not find a coach who tells their players to slide like that. You need to ring them up. And a coach, if he wants to argue with you, that's a player safety rule. And I don't know any umpire who wouldn't have your back. I don't know any assigner that wouldn't have your back. And I don't know any state agency, association director that wouldn't have your back in that particular play. So make the call. It's an ejection. No hesitation.
I agree with that 100%. And it brings me to the next play, which is maybe not as dangerous as this one that we just saw. But in professional baseball, we call it bush league. And that's when you make a runner slide when you don't have to, when you fake a tag. It's not illegal at the major league level, but it will get you drilled probably the next time you come up. However, at the high school level, I guess there's a rule against that. So let's take a look at this particular fake tag, and you tell me, Brady, how you rule it when you're an umpire, and how you go ahead and take care of everything here. We'll cue this baby up. Fake tag, kind of swipes down there, makes the runner, get down. In fact, the runner in this play, we won't play it all the way through, but the runner actually gets up and he ends up going on to third base. So obviously he was trying to impede the progress to keep the runner from going from first to third, or maybe even first to score. How do you play? How do you call this play if you're an umpire at the high school level?
Sure. Textbook obstruction. It's in the definitions. It's, Rule 2 is definitions in the rule book, and it's the most important rule because it defines every other rule. So if you're a coach, a player, an umpire, learn Rule 2, and you'll be set. Textbook obstruction. That's a delayed dead ball. He's going to get at least one base with the hustle he was giving. If that's a deep hit ball and he's hustling like that and he gets to third. We don't assume with us awarding a base whether he'd be thrown out or not. We just award based on what base he would have gotten to. So, and I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but the throw doesn't matter. So if you think that had he been able to keep his pace up and he would have rounded third, give him home plate. And if I'm the base umpire, the way he was hustling to third base, he's absolutely getting home too. There's no place in that, like you said, it's Bush League. I don't know, coaches, why you would teach that. It's not in the spirits of the game. It's unsportsmanlike. And in high school rules, the player will get a warning and the coach will get a warning. And if it happens again, the player's ejected. It's no nonsense when it comes to unsportsmanlike conduct like that, especially when it's a detriment to the game.
Well said, and a good point, certainly, to keep in mind. So everybody out there who thinks a fake tag is a fun thing to do, go ahead and realize that you're going to get everybody in trouble doing that. Now let's go to a part of the game, Brady, where I think that there's more complaining. You, an umpire, can tell us, certainly verify to that, than any other part of the game, and that is the strike zone. You probably hear barking from the first pitch of the game. We see it on the screen, Major League Baseball, when we see that ball go outside the imaginary strike zone that's put up there on your TV screen. But let's take a look through the official strike zone as it is written by the rule book at the Major League level, the OBR. It'll be described by Ted Barrett. We don't have the audio, but I'll ad-lib what Ted was telling us as we take a look at this video. And then you tell me a little bit later on how this strike zone is a little bit different than it is when you take a look at a strike zone at the high school level. The bottom of the knees, the hollow of the knees, marks the bottom of the strike zone, and Ted Barrett pointing it out right there to the midpoint between the top of the shoulders and the top of the belt. So he's showing you where it is as that hitter is setting up. The Major League rules say, all right, when you actually judge the top of the strike zone, it's when the hitter is in his process of swinging. So when the hitter starts to swing right there, that's when he's going to say, all right, the top of the strike zone is that midpoint between the top of the shoulders and the top of the belt when that runner is actually starting his swing. So Ted Barrett is going to show you right there is where the top of the strike zone is. Brady Hood, how does that differ from what the definition of the strike zone is at the NFHS level?
Sure. It's pretty much the same with the exception of when we establish a strike zone. So that's the biggest difference. In the Major League, like you just explained, the strike zone is established when the hitter starts to swing. In high school rules, the strike zone is established when by the hitter's normal stance. So what I mean by that is his normal, just like the kid in that video, a normal batting stance. If you have a squatted, you're sitting on your knees trying to hit low pitches and get every strike or ball that you can, you're not going to get that call. It's not established at that point, and I actually had a situation last summer. It was a little funny. It was summer ball, but it was using high school rules. This kid, he was bending over. I mean, his back it looked parallel to the ground. It was the weirdest batting stance I've seen, just watching baseball and then umpiring, and it makes my back hurt. I don't know how he was swinging at pitches. He was bent over, and the first pitch in was at his shoulders because he was bent over, and I rang him up for a strike, and he looked at me and the coach was, is that the kind of day we're going to have? Because of course it was one of the first few batters of the game. So, I was getting it honest right from the get-go, and just in between innings, I talked to the coach. Luckily for me, he grounded out the next pitch. But I told the coach, it's from his natural stance, and when you get an exaggerated stance, I don't understand. I'm not a coach, so I don't understand why a coach would teach that stance. I don't think it's just being a fan of the game. I don't know too many batters that have such exaggerated stance. I don't know if there's a benefit to it. I suppose the coach told me, I've told him not to stand like that, but he hits the ball. So what can I do? And I can appreciate that. It's from your natural stance, not the exaggerated, sit on your ankles.
Well, Brady Hood, I don't know what kind of a day you had overall that day when that batter went up there. We're all squatted down at home plate and you called a strike on him first. You've had a very good day here on Ask the Rules Guy. I thank you for being a guest here. But before you leave, you can't get out of here before we deliver one thing to you, and that is a question from the Impossible Test. Now, the Impossible Test is on our website, the Baseball Rules Academy. Once you become a full-fledged member, you'll be able to use every rule, every video, every post and blog and case study that there is, including all the courses and tests that there are. Now, up there right now, free to examine around. All you have to do is put your email in and give us your first name and your email, and you're in as a free member. You can come in and take the sample quizzes, including the Impossible Test. So we urge you to do that. I'm going to pick question number 6, Brady Hood, from the Impossible Test, and see how you do. Are you ready for the Impossible Test?
Probably not. So let's try it.
Perfect answer for you, Brady Hood. Here we go.
All right.
The pitcher attempts a pickoff throw to first base. The runner is obviously safe. Mm-hmm. The throw is in the dirt, and the first baseman knocks it down. The ball slowly rolls toward the first base coach. The runner is not going anywhere. He's standing on the bag. The first base coach reaches down, picks the ball up, and tosses it back to the first baseman. This is a multiple choice question. And the correct answer is A, this is interference without a play being made. The ball is dead and the runner stays at first base. B, this is nothing. Since there was nothing going on, the ball remains in play. And C, this is interference. The runner on first has to be called out. Your answer to this question, Brady Hood, is?
Okay, if I'm thinking through it, I would say that the coach interfered. And, I'm a high school umpire, so intent doesn't matter. And the fact that he was safe by a mile doesn't matter. He interfered with the defender by picking up a live ball, making it a dead ball. So I would say C, that the runner would be out for coach's interference with the play.
Correct. I would mark it down as C as well. Congratulations to you. You're a tough one to catch up on one of those rules questions. I can guess about that. But we'll get you. That was number 6 on our Impossible Test on the sample quizzes. That is free to everybody out there who gives us their email address and just wants to come in and browse around through the Baseball Rules Academy website. I hope that you enjoyed our program tonight. We certainly enjoyed having Brady Hood as our guest. And if you'd like to be a guest on our Ask the Rules Guy, all you have to do is get online and you'll find our email on the website. And you can get after it and come on and be my guest and be part of the Impossible Test. So let's hope we get back out on the baseball diamond very soon. Major leagues all the way down to the little squirts. Boys and girls, we all need to get out on the field soon. Stay safe at home, and let's look forward to the day when we get out there and play some safe, educated baseball. For Baseball Rules Academy, thank you, Brady Hood, and everybody else who loves the rules of the game. So long, everybody.